各位傳媒朋友
Good morning. Welcome to the press briefing. The Chief Executive will say a few words and then she'll take questions from the floor. Now I'll invite the Chief Executive to speak. Friends of the media, members of the public, good morning. Today is the World Health Day. I would like to pay my respect to all healthcare workers around the world fighting the epidemic. For healthcare workers who've been fighting the epidemic for several months, including frontline officers of the Department of Health and all the healthcare workers taking good care of patients at the hospital authority and other hospitals, I would like to thank them for their hard work. And then in the coming week, the various control measures we rolled out to regulate social activities, they will soon expire because there's a 14-day limit. Now, of course, we are all concerned for these measures that may soon expire, such as regulation of commercial premises or regulation of catering operations and so on. Now, what will we do? Maybe you're all very concerned about it. Now, I will try my best to make an early announcement. Yesterday, we already made one extension. Now, this is not a legal requirement, though. At the Hong Kong International Airport and certain boundary control points, we have imposed certain 14-day measure. Today, the 4th of April, is the 4th of April. This measure is supposed to expire today, but we have extended the measures until further notice. For example, at the Hong Kong International Airport, apart from exempted persons, non-Hong Kong residents will not be allowed entry into Hong Kong, and this will continue. Of course, the epidemic remains serious. We have now over 900 confirmed cases, and we still have double-digit growth in the number of cases every day. And then many of the cases are still imported, involving all Hong Kong residents coming back. Unless we are not going to allow entry of Hong Kong residents to Hong Kong, otherwise this phenomenon will probably stay for a while. And thirdly, I'd like to say that various trades have expressed concerns. In the past week, throughout the day, I've been meeting with representatives of different trades. Now we have a dire situation with our economy, so they asked about support measures from the government. Now, earlier I announced the plan to start a second round of the anti-epidemic fund measures. Now, in this second round of measures, we would like to preserve jobs as far as possible, especially the jobs of grassroots workers. So even bosses who came to meet with me expressed their wish that they would like the government to help them keep the jobs of their employees, and we've heard that loud and clear. And then there are various trades affected by the series of social distancing measures we've introduced, and definitely we will take that into account. Now I will take questions from the floor. Okay, the floor is open to questions. Please raise your hand and use the microphone, and please first identify your organization before you speak. Mrs. Lam, I'm from Cable TV News, Poon Yim Sing. I have questions of three aspects. One, the measure has been in place for over a week, the social distancing, and you've issued over 900 advisories, verbal advice, but you only started giving out fixed penalty ticket yesterday. So are you doing too little, too late? And should people be made to wear a mask in public places? And then bars and karaokes that have been asked to suspend the operations, will they be covered by the subsidy scheme? And the MTRCL may also roll out certain fare concession schemes. Would there be subsidy from the government, or would MTRCL pay for that? Now, you have received a pay rise in this time, and people express concern, would you cut your pay so you could, tide over these difficulties together with the people? Now, first about our measures to prevent social gatherings, that is CAP 599G. When we first rolled out or introduced this piece of regulation, we said that we wanted to enhance social distancing measures, so of course people will be affected. That's why in the first few days we would just give verbal warnings or advice. But of course, every piece of legislation must be enforced properly, and that's why starting from yesterday, the law enforcement authorities have issued fixed penalty tickets with powers given under the regulation. And that's always been the approach we have adopted. Now, for measures that may have far-reaching impact on the public, we would like the public to exercise self-discipline. But at the same time, there is a legal basis for us to take stronger measures, and if necessary, we will not hesitate to do so. If we find that advice doesn't work and then we can't achieve the intended purpose, then we would step up our enforcement efforts. So that's why from now on, we will take stronger law enforcement measures. It's not a matter of whether we're moving quickly or slowly, but rather we will monitor the development of the epidemic and whether such measures are acceptable to the public. Now, experts have suggested additional measures. Again, we have to consider the data and the development of the epidemic. In the past 2-3 months, I've had constant interactions with the experts. As you know, I have an expert advisory panel. Each expert may have somewhat different views, so that's why in every discussion we have to come up with most pragmatic and balanced measure after discussion and after different views have been expressed. Now, recently, Professor Gabriel Leung published an article overseas, and if we use such stringent control to control the epidemic over a drawn-out period, and maybe people won't find it acceptable. It may not be sustainable, therefore. That's why since January, when we started to take measures against the epidemic, I said that we would have to make swift response in the light of development of the epidemic. Second question on the anti-epidemic fund. I already mentioned that. Now, when we're going to design further measures under the scheme, now we've heard the views of the employers, employees, trade associations, and labor unions. And all have said that there must be effective measures so employers could keep their employees. So everyone is united on that. But at the same time, the government has taken certain mandatory measures, and there are specific trades affected as a result. For example, for business operations that have to be closed because of these measures, and we pay. Of course, we are particularly concerned about them. Now, on my own salary, I keep an open mind, but I would like to make a clarification. Now, I note that the report seems to be giving the impression that now we are in such challenging stage of the epidemic, and then there was someone, well, perhaps not just one person, but the entire ruling team, then they decided to have a pay rise. That's why last night I asked that press release be issued, that this is actually an annual exercise based on an established mechanism, and the date of pay rise was from the 1st of July. It's like last year on the 1st of October, LegCo members also received honorarium adjustment. So and so in the draft estimates, we have to include this sum in the annual estimates. It's not that all of a sudden, when LegCo is scrutinizing the draft estimates for the coming financial year, then certain officials suggested increasing the salary. It's not the case. Now, what are we going to do in future? I said earlier that the ruling team must show their determination to work with the public in fighting the epidemic, and so we donated 1 month of our salary to the community chest, and so then some non-government subsidized NGOs have benefited from that move. So we will need to take measures to fight the epidemic together, and that remains our goal. Thank you.
I'm from TVB. In respect of the pay rise, so there will be further adjustments. Are you going to consider a freeze or a pay cut? Because in other countries, their officials are doing the same. Will the CE do the same? On the question on the ban on crowd gathering, it said that some businesses will have to be closed. Is that what you are thinking about? And also on the second phase of the anti-epidemic fund, we have been told that there will be an announcement some time ago. When will there be an announcement be made? And when are you going to give $10,000 in another round of handout? As I've said, the first and foremost task at hand is to fight the pandemic, and we need to tie over the difficulties with the community. And if something is required on the part of the ruling team, well, we are willing to consider doing those measures. As for the restaurants and other premises will be subject to further regulation and restriction. Well, that would depend on the development of the pandemic, the nature of the new cases, and whether there continue to be behavior of a high-risk nature, and whether we need to take further action. The Executive Council has actually authorized the Secretary for Food and Health to take further measures. She can issue directives for the purpose of implementing further measures. Thirdly, about the anti-epidemic fund, well, we announced that the fund will be further expanded. We said that we won't stop there. And in the second phase, we would not like to adopt a targeted approach to help businesses and people in need, and we will have to consult the stakeholders. In the meantime, we have been, myself and members of my ruling team have been meeting stakeholders. We have been listening to their views. We'd like to get some focus and or consensus, and that's one, and that is whether we are talking about the employers, the employees, trade associations, or trade unions. They have all asked us to do something directly to help businesses retain their employees. We are in a very difficult position. Employment rate is on the rise. And if enterprises are trying their best to retain their employees, and some employees are now on no pay leave or on half pay, we need to do something to prevent the unemployment situation from worsening. So that's what we have been doing in the past 10 years or so. I believe very soon we'll be able to announce another round of measures under the anti-epidemic fund. Let's have the last questions.
SCMP. The first question is that could you explain the grounds of the government's accusations against RTHK of breaching the One China policy? Why does the government think that there is an issue with just a question concerning Taiwan's membership in WHO? And the second, amid the risk of the outbreak, why did the government still allow horse racing to continue? And the third question is about the pay rise, and because the pro-establishment lawmakers are among those forces urging you to take a pay cut rather than accepting a pay rise. So would you do so like many leaders in other countries did? Thank you.
Well, let me answer the last question first. As I have said on the occasion when we voluntarily donated a month's salary to the community chest to assist charitable groups, especially those that are not government subvention, we said that the ultimate purpose is to demonstrate solidarity with the people of Hong Kong. So we will continue to do that with that objective in mind. But my first priority right now is to finalize as early as possible the package of relief measures under the second round of the anti-epidemic fund. As far as the second issue, allowing horse racing to continue, yes, horse racing events have been given an exemption under the prohibition of public gatherings, but they are subject to extremely stringent conditions about admission. Basically, there will be no public galleries. There will be very stringent requirements before horse racing could continue. Now, this brings us to a broader question of how long Hong Kong society could sort of operate with all these very extreme measures of social distancing. So if there are ways to strike a balance between achieving the objective of social distancing while maintaining some activities to go on, I think that should be the preferred approach. I mentioned about Professor Gabriel Leung's article, I think in New York Times. He talked about a three-way tug of war. So at the same time of combating the disease, on this occasion, coronavirus, we have also to protect the economy and also to look after the social needs of the people. So similarly, in catering business, we do not go to that extreme to close all the restaurants and coffee shops and so on, because there is something called the people's need. But we put in very extreme measures, the 6 measures imposed by legislation, hopefully to achieve the objective I just mentioned. Now, finally, on the question of RTHK, the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development has already made a statement, I think on the 2nd of April, about this particular program, the PULSE, which included an interview with the World Health Organization. I certainly endorse and support the stance and position of Secretary Edward Yao. As far as the elaboration, I understand that Secretary Yao will be attending the Special Finance Committee meetings later today with the Director of Broadcasting. So I will leave the pair to do the further explanation. But let me make this very clear. Either as a public broadcaster or a government department, RTHK has to fulfill the very important and fundamental principle of upholding one country, two systems. RTHK could not claim immunity by being a public broadcaster and not observe this very important principle of one country, two systems. And even as a public broadcaster, in the charter for RTHK, there are very clear requirements of its public broadcaster role in deepening Hong Kong people's understanding of one country, two systems. So these are the clear parameters regulating the operation of RTHK. 多謝大家。